So there's a story in the New York Times that is completely unrelated and exactly related. It's an op-ed in the New York Times. And I was going to get to it later, and I will, but let me get to it now in a different way, shape, and form. Here's the headline. You want an electric car with a 300-mile range. When was the last time you drove 300 miles? Essentially, the people want a car that they can drive for 300 miles, but really you drive maybe 90 miles a day. So why do you need one that goes that far? The answer, of course, is because I'm an American and it's what I want. I drove 431 miles on Friday and 431 miles on Saturday and a bunch of miles in between. And I could fill up at home, and I could fill up when I got there, and I was good to go. With a battery-powered car, I would have to stop once, maybe twice to charge. The reality is the responses to my tweet pointing that out are all of the vein of, we know better than you what you need for you, and if you will just let us make decisions for you, you will be better off, and you should thank us and the government for putting you outside your comfort zone. What is really happening is there is and has been a prevailing consensus across political partisans of the elite versus the rest of us. They believe they have the ideas of the ordered society, and they may quibble on some things, like, for example, abortion. But by and large, they tend to see the world in the same way. They went to the Ivy League. They got their degrees from Harvard and Yale. They've embedded themselves within the government bureaucracy because they believe the highest and best use of themselves is to make government work better for you. And if only you hicks and rubes would let them work for you, you would be fine. And they are very upset from the current composition of the Supreme Court to you that there is a growing distrust of them. Look at BlackRock and ESG, the environmental, social, and governance criteria for businesses. BlackRock has decided by controlling your 401k and your pension plan, they can steer corporate America into doing things that BlackRock wants for the betterment of society. Whether you think it's better or not, they believe themselves to be a sophisticated elite who know better than you the way the world works. You're not sophisticated. You are not well read. How many of the top books on the New York Times bestseller nonfiction list have you bothered to read, you hick? You watch Fox News and Newsmax and listen to talk radio. You're ill-informed, misinformed, and disinformed, unlike them. And many of them exist within government bureaucracy. At the FBI, and the CIA, and the EPA, and all the other acronymed agencies, and they know better than you how the world works. And they run the Fortune 500, and they run the hedge funds, and they run private equity. And they live in a world you don't live in. It tends to be coastal. It tends to be urban. It tends to be highly progressive culturally. It tends to be unchurched. Meanwhile, you probably live within 15 miles of a church, and you probably do not live within 15 miles of a beach, unless you're listening on WOKV out in Jacksonville. You probably go to church, and you probably know someone who drives a pickup truck just because they want a pickup truck. What these people believe is that they should be able to order society in a way they think is best for you. The problem here is that, as we saw with COVID, and that was the eye-opening experience for many people, the elite in this country are able to digest data, are able to research data, are able to analyze data, and are able to inevitably arrive at the wrong conclusions. And those wrong conclusions inevitably come from them deciding that they know how to order your life better than you. So they can say now, well, we knew all along that keeping kids in masks and out of school would screw them up, but at the time, they willfully lied, or they didn't really know it because many of them are childless, And they presumed that kids really were resilient. The American Association of Pediatrics, for example, is the left-wing mainline organization for pediatrics who have normalized and mainlined transgender surgery for the young and believe that keeping kids in masks would not be bad for them and kids would be resilient. For years, they pushed the story that kids needed facial contact with parents to learn emotions, build an emotional IQ, and learn to read lips and understand language. And then they memory hold that on their websites. Oh, no, kids are resilient. They'll be fine. And we're living with the consequences of it. What's going on ultimately, not just in the United States, but in the Western world and in China, is that the elite realize the people have had enough of them. And they're doing everything possible to stack the deck against you from you taking power. They don't like the populist strains running through Western society. If anything, the populist strains that ran through the Arab Spring with protests in the streets demanding more liberty is what's happening in the West right now in a different way. It is the elite in the West have had power for a very long time. They see the world in a way that is secular, that is godless, that is hostile to the working class. And they are fighting like hell to keep it. And they have a couple of advantages. They do. Educated voters, put another way, people with college degrees, they are far more likely to vote. And if you are white and college educated at this day and age, you are more likely to vote with the left. So they know that in special elections, they have an advantage. And they assume that in the upcoming midterm, they will have somewhat of an advantage because godless, secular, progressive women with college degrees love to kill their babies. And they know that these women are fired up over abortion and that they will go vote on the sole issue of abortion. And they want you to know that you Hicks and Rubes did it to yourself by pushing a Supreme Court conservative majority that would get rid of Roe v. Wade. It's all on you, not on them. They know that you need to drive the battery-powered vehicle, and they will make it difficult for you to buy a gas-powered vehicle. They will drive up your costs and force you to change because they know better than you what is best for you. They want you to eat bugs and give up beef to save the planet. They don't really care about saving you. They don't really care about improving your life. They're fine with rolling blackouts and brownouts in society, because they're more interested in what an autistic kid from Sweden thinks than what you think about your quality of life, because she cares about the environment and you care about taking care of yourself and your family. And if you had not had that 5.3 kids in the minivan, you wouldn't be screwing the planet. So it's all your fault anyway. These people drip with contempt for you. They put up with you because they can't exterminate you, because they're not Hitler yet. These people don't like you. And that's ultimately what all of this is about. It's what the FBI agents are doing. The FBI agents are a cloistered elite in Washington, D.C., who now get gigs on CNN when they leave so they can comment on society. And guess what? They're all uniformly progressive. Out in the heartland, there's an FBI field office somewhere. And those people are doing the hard work of keeping you safe at night. They live a thankless job, and they're furious with their headquarters in Washington for being controlled by an elite. These people in Atlanta and Des Moines, in Dallas, Texas, they want to keep you safe from bad people. And the ones in Washington, D.C., they want to keep you safe from mean things on social media. You should not blanketly smear the entirety of the FBI. You should be mindful that there are really good agents at the FBI who put their lives on the line on a daily basis to keep you and me safe and to find bad men and bring them to justice. But there are a lot of them in Washington who get entrenched in Washington. And many of the people in Washington have lost touch with everyday Americans. Many of the Republicans and Democrats alike, behind the scenes, they don't particularly much care for you. And it's notable that when all these Republican leaders retire, where do they wind up? Not back in their home state, but they stay in Washington, D.C. It's a problem. And it has allowed them to order society in a way that as society now says, this isn't the way we wanted, they're scrambling and fighting like hell to keep it ordered their way, because ultimately, at the end of the day, they get to cash in and benefit. They've given up on the American dream. They think China's on the rise, and they want to cash in and protect themselves and their families, and they kind of resent like hell that you actually want to keep the country going, believe in the American dream, and think we can do something to turn the corner, because you know you're a hick and a rube. They are the enlightened elite who see China as inevitable, And they'd at least like to get the spoils of the country in their bank accounts before handing everything over to China. And the only way you stand up to them is you show up and vote. And when you show up and vote, and you send people to Congress, even some I don't particularly care for, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, at least what you're doing is you're rubbing salt in the wound of the elite and telling them they and their way is not inevitable and is not perfect, and they can be held accountable. It's why voting is so important, even if you think they're going to steal it from you. Show up and vote, because let's just say they steal the election. Let's just say I'm wrong and you're right. They still know how many votes they have to steal. And it's a reminder to them that they're still outnumbered in this country when they see those votes. So you've got to go vote. You've got to go vote. If you don't like what the elite are doing, if you want to fight back against them, you must go vote. And they're going to do everything between now and November to convince you voting is futile. What's done is done, and you can't change it, except you can.